Good morning. This is Garry Glaub in Mooresville, North Carolina. Today we're going to cover Matthew chapter 1, verses 17 through 25, and I'm calling this one, A Virgin Shall Conceive. All of the Bible is true, factual, and real. Many people think that the Bible is none of these because it was written by men, but instead it was God-breathed. The world we live in also was created by the breath of God. Sadly, there are many people who claim to be Christians who do not believe in God's active creation of this world and of man, and instead choose the theory of evolution for that explanation. Let me emphasize the word theory, as even the scientists who dreamed up that garbage do not call it law, but simply a theory. Scientists have attempted to explain God out of the picture, explain away his role in creation, and in so doing, become the gods of their own lives. Because the existence of God changes everything, especially a God who desires to be known and be a part of our lives. God could not be known unless he allowed that. But if God is who he claims to be, most importantly, that makes us accountable to God, not just accountable to ourselves. In addition to not believing in God as creator, there also are many Christians who do not believe in the virgin birth of Jesus. As people stumble down this path, especially for those who claim to be Christians, the biggest question that occurs is the size of their God, the power of their God. Why impose limits within our brains to a limitless God? Yes, this world has physical laws, but when do we begin to think that he who created all of those physical laws cannot change those at any moment? Isn't that what Jesus did in every single miracle? The prophet Isaiah confronted one of the evil kings of the southern kingdom of Judah, King Ahaz. The conversation between Isaiah and King Ahaz began with words from God concerning what events would occur. Isaiah warned King Ahaz that Syria, Ephraim, and the son of Remaliah had united in a plot against King Ahaz and the land of Judah. King Ahaz did not believe Isaiah and did not believe the words came from God. God then had Isaiah offer proof to King Ahaz. Isaiah chapter 7, verses 10 through 14 says this: Moreover, the Lord spoke again to Ahaz, saying, Ask a sign for yourself from the Lord your God. Ask it either in the depth or in the height above. But Ahaz said, I will not ask, nor will I test the Lord. Then he said, Hear now, O house of David, is it a small thing for you to weary men, but will you weary my God also? Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. What an interesting conversation. God, through Isaiah, offered any sign, proof that these words were directly from God. King Ahaz could have asked for an earthquake, a rainbow, a shooting star. He could have asked for the daylight to turn to night. He could have asked for a male unblemished ram to walk up to him and sit at his feet. But instead, the godless King Ahaz acted like he was pious, more godly than Isaiah. Oh, I could never do something so offensive and challenge the Lord. He said this because asking for a sign was asking for proof. And in that moment, it would reveal that King Ahaz really had not believed in the God of the Hebrew people, had not believed the stories and miracles that God had performed for his chosen people. Instead of thinking that God had placed him on the throne of Judah, King Ahaz thought it all had to do with his bloodline and talent. So Isaiah let King Ahaz know that God would give him a sign, even if he did not name one. It was a sign that would be for all of us, but not really for King Ahaz, because King Ahaz would not live long enough to see the sign become reality. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. And in this verse, we see one of the most important statements in the Bible. Many people, and sadly, many Christians, try to disbelieve the miracle of this verse by stating that the Hebrew word used for virgin is Alma, which can mean young girl and can also mean virgin. But understanding the context of this verse makes the meaning of this word obvious. If God was offering a miracle, and even something ostentatious to King Ahaz, how is it a miracle when a young girl conceives? This happened daily. It still happens daily. That is not a miracle. Instead, God offered the sign of something that only would happen once. In addition, this offered sign said that the child born would be a boy. Once again, guessing that in advance is not miraculous either. Isaiah had a 50% chance of getting that one right. And finally, Isaiah also prophesied that the name of that boy would be Emmanuel. Many people say that because this child was named Jesus instead of Emmanuel, that this prophecy was incorrect. Emmanuel means God with us. How is it possible for God to come to this earth in the form of a baby without being born from a virgin? A human father would mean that this child also would have sin nature. In that way, this child could not have lived a sinless life and become the only sacrifice to pay for the sins of all mankind. Mary and Joseph named him Jesus, which means God saves, or the Lord is salvation. It is the same name as that of Joshua in Hebrew. As we will see later in a passage in today's lesson, an angel in a dream told Joseph that they should name the child Jesus. Separately, an angel also had told Mary the same thing. Luke chapter 1, verses 30 through 31 says this: Then the angel said to her, Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. And behold, you will conceive in your womb and bring forth a son, and shall call his name Jesus. Notice how these two names fit together. Without being God with us, Jesus could not be the God who saves. Without being Emmanuel, he could not be Jesus. The Apostle Paul explained it this way in Hebrews 2, verse 9. But we see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels, for the suffering of death, crowned with glory and honor, that he, by the grace of God, might taste death for everyone. In our previous study, we began the Gospel of Matthew with the genealogy of Jesus. The repetitive word is begot, and unfortunately, these are the verses most people skip. Begot, for those unfamiliar with this old-style word, signifies bringing a child into this world through reproduction. When God the Father refers to Jesus as my only begotten Son, in the same manner, he is pointing to the human mother of Jesus, along with the immortal Father. There was no birth of Jesus as God, but there was a birth of Jesus as a man. In the genealogy, after seeing who begot who, we get to this verse. Matthew chapter 1, verse 16 says this: And Jacob begot Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, who is called Christ. Notice that it does not say Joseph begot Jesus, as is the standard way births in this genealogy are listed in all of the previous verses. Instead, Joseph was the husband of Mary, not the father of Jesus. This does not lessen the role of Joseph. God chose Joseph in the same manner that God chose Mary for this role, even though Joseph is not venerated in the same manner. Joseph was a godly man and took care of Jesus. Okay, let's read today's passage, Matthew chapter 1, verses 18 through 25, and it says this. Now the birth of Jesus Christ was as follows. After his mother Mary was betrothed to Joseph, before they came together, she was found with child of the Holy Spirit. Then Joseph, her husband, being a just man and not wanting to make her a public example, was minded to put her away secretly. But while he thought about these things, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream, saying, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take to you Mary your wife, for that which is conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit, and she will bring forth a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. So all this was done that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet, saying, Behold, the virgin shall be with child and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which is translated, God with us. Then Joseph, being aroused from sleep, did as the angel of the Lord commanded him, and took to him his wife, and did not know her till she had brought forth her firstborn son, and he called his name Jesus. We have a tendency of looking at this passage through different eyes than those intended by Matthew. In our modern culture, births out of wedlock are commonplace rather than shocking. Rather than a baby daddy whose impact on the child typically ends after conception, Joseph was as different from that as possible. Even though he was not the biological father, Joseph could not have been more loving or supporting. In those days, Israel took God's law and added to the law, making it even more difficult to follow. But God's law does say this, Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 2, one of illegitimate birth shall not enter the assembly of the Lord. Even to the 10th generation, none of his descendants shall enter the assembly of the Lord. There were more stringent aspects of the law in regard to this as well. As the betrothed husband of Mary, Joseph could have Mary stoned to death, as well as the man who had impregnated her. And if the leaders at the temple did not believe Joseph, believing he had impregnated Mary, Joseph could have been stoned to death as well. Instead, Joseph believed the words of the angel in his dream and immediately acted on that dream. Amazingly, Joseph always acted on his dreams in this manner. Joseph had at least 4 dreams, one concerning the birth of Jesus, one telling him to take the family to Egypt, another telling him to bring the family back from Egypt, and a final one telling him to avoid the section of Israel where Herod's son lived. Instead of accusing Mary of lying, as certainly Joseph knew he was not the father of the unborn child, Joseph demonstrated his love for Mary and for the unborn child by doing all in his power to protect them both. The angel told Joseph in the dream that Jesus would save his people from their sins, which identified Jesus as the Messiah. Somehow, Catholicism continues to believe that Mary remained a virgin for the rest of her life, demonstrating her complete consecration to God. This is in contrast to the verse here that Joseph did not know her till she had brought forth her firstborn son. This inerrant belief began in the 2nd century and was declared formally at the Fifth Ecumenical Council in 533 AD at Constantinople, with 165 bishops present. This verse also speaks of the siblings of Jesus. Mark chapter 6, verse 3 says, "Is this not the carpenter, the son of Mary, and brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon? And are not his sisters here with us?" So they were offended at him. So what is more problematic? A belief that Mary remained a virgin, or a belief that Mary was not a virgin when she was impregnated by the Holy Spirit? Definitely the latter, for this belief imposes limitations on God. If God is incapable of this miracle, then he also is incapable of creation. If he is incapable of creation, then he is also incapable of resurrection. And if Jesus could not conquer death, neither can we. Satan tries desperately to replace God, and the creation, virgin birth, and resurrection of Jesus are all foundations of the Christian belief. Without believing that God was responsible for all three of these events, the tenets of Christianity are unhinged. Without belief in all three of these, in God's role, it reveals the same lack of belief we could see in King Ahaz. Without believing in the God of the Bible, we cannot believe God nor believe in God. This is Garry Glaub in Mooresville, North Carolina. Have a blessed day.